Welcome to the Science and Paranormal with Dr. Yana and Dr. Elliott, where science meets the unexpected, where we delve deep into the mysteries that straddle the line between scientific inquiry and paranormal. Get ready for a mind-altering journey as we embark on this phenomenal discovery together on United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, good evening. It has been a cold evening, I must say, and dark and late.
Welcome to another episode of Science and the Paranormal with Dr. Yana and Dr. Elliott. We're broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM out of New Orleans, and also on Roku TV. Tonight, we're going to talk to you about reincarnation. Are you influenced by the previous versions of you?
That is such an incredible topic, Dr. Elliott.
It is. I do find reincarnation fascinating, although I don't know if it's funny. Sometimes in life, I feel like, oh, I wish I would have kind of went down this path instead of being a police officer, like an intelligence officer, or I wish I would have tried this, or I wish I would have tried that. And it, in some regards, it's, it's kind of unfair that like in this current life we can't do multiple things. I mean, some people do switch careers, but in my experience, a lot of people are afraid to leave what they know. Usually don't. Even for me, I've stayed mostly in law enforcement, and when I retired, I kind of thought to myself, if I was going to get back into work, it would have been probably something to do with law enforcement, whether it was private investigator status or something like that. But I don't know. Sometimes I wonder too if I don't want to come back, because sometimes you work so hard in this life. It's like, do you really want to come back and do all that again? I don't know. What's your thoughts on reincarnation, on coming back, on just taking life in as it is in this lifetime?
That is so interesting because we don't get a choice whether to come back or not. We have to finish what we have not finished, and the questions, the lessons that we have to learn and we didn't learn. So we have to go back and back and back again into this earth, into different incarnations, in order to square things away, because like now you don't want to come back, but it's not up to you really. So we just
I don't want
had
to sometimes, I'll tell you that. I just want to stay in the peaceful environment that comes comes afterwards, hopefully.
yeah, that's what we all hope, right? Not to turn into some sort of a rat or a dog, right? Into some miser, right? And be in a poor condition somewhere. Yeah,
Oh, God,
reincarnation
yeah.
is a fascinating topic. It is also known as rebirth or transmigration. Is a belief that suggests the soul or consciousness of a person is reborn into a new body after death. It is a concept that has been present in various cultures and religions throughout the history, including Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and certain sects of Sikhism. But the interesting thing that if we think about it, we don't think about ourselves in terms of Judeo-Christian perspective or Islam, right? However, that was exactly the case and central topic of ancient Jews and also Christians. And how can we call that ancient if it was just 2,000 years ago? The concept of reincarnation was central for first Christians. And I was going to say, I remember. Oh, yes, I remember. I was right there. Exactly. That was the time only in 300s when things have changed, and the phenomenon of reincarnation decided to be buried and never remembered, because as the Bible was composed and certain books went into it and some did not make into it, also did not, the idea of reincarnation also didn't make into it. And somehow nowadays, when we talk, or as Christians or even Jews, when we talk about reincarnation, it is a topic that is a taboo. And all of a sudden, you become possessed by a demon if you talk about it, that you are, in fact, could be reincarnated and have past lives. So it's very interesting that this idea of reincarnation that is rooted in the belief that as life is a continuous cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. And according to this belief, the soul is eternal and goes through a series of lives, each offering opportunities for spiritual growth of evolution. The specific circumstances of each life, such as our social status, talents, and experiences, are believed to be influenced by the actions and choices made in previous life, known as karma. And we all know what karma is, in fact, but it is not in our Western vocabulary, for sure that it wasn't, but now it is. It made itself it way right through, and we all talk about it, right? In which regard, like, oh, it's bad karma, right? Bad karma. Oh, it's karma. We all know that word, right?
Yeah. Karma kind of comes more from your Eastern religions, and like you said, it's not. We talk about it here in the West, but we don't like delve deep into it like the Eastern religions do. Hinduism and Buddhism certainly, believe in karma. I believe in karma. I've seen it happen to people. People do good deeds, and all of a sudden, like, something nice will happen for them. It might not be extraordinary, but it could be something as simple as they get a course that they wanted to go on or something like that. And then I've seen, people treat other people with ill intentions, and it comes back to them. It might not come back tomorrow, but it eventually does come back to them. So I certainly do believe in karma. And it's really interesting, the reincarnation idea, that we're here to learn as many life lessons as possible, and the possibility that you could be returned to kind of fill that void. And almost like how we talk about old souls, when you meet somebody and you can tell that they're an old soul and they're just very knowledgeable and feel like they've been around the block, kind of thing. And then you meet some other people that are kind of kind of goofy and young and immature, and can kind of need to grow up a little bit more or learn those life lessons. I tried to actually get somebody to come to the Paranormal Symposium this year to speak about reincarnation. I think I reached out to Dr. Jim Tucker at the University of Virginia Perceptual Studies Unit, because he looks at a lot of children in past lives and reincarnation, because there's a lot of research that's been done on reincarnation, saying that children between the ages of 2 and 8 at the higher end seem to be the ones that really recall like their past lives. And then it seems like once they hit that age between 6 and 8, they start to kind of forget that past life, and then they start to focus on their current life. So that's really interesting. And this isn't just like, children make up stories all the time. I was just at my brother-in-law's house tonight, and the kids were pretending that they were seeing Annabelle and Chucky, because they on YouTube now they watch those scary videos, So like, I know that
thanks
Annabelle.
to you, to Uncle Elliott.
Yes, well, probably, yeah. Well, it's funny because I do have a replica Annabelle from the movie, and I do have the Raggedy Ann doll that somebody gave me that was around the same time frame on the production line as the real Annabelle. And I showed it to my niece Nola, and she just absolutely loves it, because I have it up here in the office, locked in a case that I made to look like the Annabelle case. but
That
it's
is
funny.
horrifying, Dr. Elliott. That is absolutely horrifying. I will
I
never
know.
visit you there.
I know. You could just barely see my haunted monkey in the frame too. Oh, there he is, just sitting on my shelf. But yeah, I've got a couple
No, is
haunted
this a
things.
real haunted monkey? Seriously?
Yes. So the story behind that, this is funny. We keep jumping topics, but I mean they're all interesting. Um, so I was on Facebook one day, and somehow this like flea market kind of Facebook page popped up, and I could see people
Mm-hmm.
talking in it, and they were talking about what to do with this allegedly haunted monkey. So um, I messaged the guy and I said, "Hey, do you have the monkey?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "What's the story behind it?" He said his dad owns this flea market in Missouri, and that he basically goes to like estate sales and things like that. So this older man had created this monkey, apparently, according to his sisters. No idea why. Very freaky looking, and basically he passed away, and they wanted to get rid of it. So him and his dad went and collected some things for their flea market, and the son decided to keep the monkey. So then he brings it home, and he was living with a girlfriend at the time, and he said that they would both come home from work and find the monkey in different places. So eventually one night they both were watching a movie. He said it was more active on full moons, and it was a full moon. They were watching a movie, and they actually saw the monkey's head turn a little bit. So the girlfriend said, "You've got to get rid of this monkey." So he locked it in a trunk and then went on his dad's flea market site, basically trying to get rid of it. So the first thing I did was obviously do some research to see, like, oh, does this flea market sell haunted items all the time? You know what I mean? And is that how they get rid of like ugly, useless things? And there was nothing else on the website talking about anything to do with the paranormal. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I told the guy, I said, well, I'd be willing to take it off your hands. I explained who I was. I said, at least it would be safe here if it really is haunted. And I said, we could also do some research on it, being paranormal phenomena research and investigation. So I ended up having it shipped to me, and he has not done anything at all except be on a television show. He was on a paranormal television show called Repossessed, and he basically was on an episode there about his backstory, and the team of investigators basically come to people and take the item if the people don't want it anymore. But obviously he with me. So I used to have him in my fake Annabelle case, and then once I got the Raggedy Ann doll to sit next to the movie Annabelle, I had to kick him out of the case. So he's just roaming free now. But as you can see, sitting there just loving life on my shelf. But it's interesting because Sarah works up in my office quite a bit when she worked from home, and she's never experienced anything from him either. She was actually more creeped out by the Raggedy Ann doll than she was Joe. That's his name,
I don't
Joe.
blame her.
Joe the
Mhm.
monkey. But
Joe
yeah,
the
no,
monkey.
Joe the monkey. That was his name that the flea market people gave him. So I kept the name. So yeah, so it's really interesting. Actually, the other haunted item there for those that are watching on YouTube is that red painting over there. Anyone that's heard me do any other interviews or podcasts would have heard me talk about that painting, and that had an interesting story too. So that painting was painted by a lady that was going through a rough time. Normally, whenever she goes through a rough time, she likes to express it in her art. And she had painted that picture, and it's got like a little brown wooden door in the middle of it. And it was basically to represent that she had just gone through a rough time. She's about to open a door, kind of start a new life. Kind of simple story. Started to hang it up in her house, and it wouldn't stay hung on the wall, kept falling off. And then one time it actually flew off and hit her husband. So again, she went online and was talking about this was in a paranormal group though, talking about what to do with it. Should she burn it, destroy it? So I sent her a private message and just said, hey, where are you at? I found out she's actually in Canada. She was in Western Canada. I explained again who I was, and I said, hey, I'd be willing to pay the shipping on that. And if you want to part with it. And like, she didn't ask me for money because it's her art and she sells it and things like that. Like, she didn't ask for any money or anything. She was happy that I was willing to pay the shipping. So she went to Staples to go get the packaging material and almost got T-boned on her way there. So she gets the packaging material. She goes back to her mother's house. She wraps it all up, puts it in the van and says, I'll just leave it in the van for the night, post office in the morning. And on her, when she woke up and was about to go on her way to the post office, someone had tried to break into her van. They had actually ripped the door handle off her van, and she sent me pictures of it and said, this thing is just bad luck. Like, are you sure you want me to send it? I'm like, yeah, still send it. So she goes to the post office and she's trying to text me and ask me how I want this item shipped. And, like, if you send it overnight, $10,000. And if you send it just snail mail, it's cheaper. So I said, obviously just send it the cheapest possible way. And she did, but her phone kept like glitching out and resetting on her. So it took her like at least 45 minutes to get that information across to me. And then finally it got shipped. I've had it hung on my wall and 2 places, actually. I've lived here for 2 years, and it was in as well. And it's that piece here. So I don't know if it was something that she was manifesting at her house, possibly. But I mean, it's kind of a cool painting. So I like it anyways, as a piece of artwork.
Interesting. It sounds like something similar to poltergeist, right? When teenagers can actually exhibit this interesting energy and cause things to happen. That's what we know of, right? And perhaps those were also the coincidences that happened because she was in that state, because she expressed negative energy and negative feelings at the time. That's so interesting. So you do not feel anything there.
No, I don't.
In your office, there's nothing.
Yeah, no, I don't at all. I don't feel any bad like energy or anything like that from it. And yeah, nothing's ever happened. There are stories though of, people being putting their emotion and their intention into their artwork. There was actually a gentleman that used to, I'm trying to remember his name. I can't remember his name right now. I'll have to do some research on it, but he used to always paint himself with an injured eye. And this one time he was at an art convention and a fight broke out between 2 artists, and he went to go break the fight up, and he lost not the eye that he always painted, but his opposite eye. He ended up getting it injured breaking up this fight. And it's just kind of strange that, he always would paint himself with an injured eye, and then down the road he ends up getting an injured eye. Call it what you will. It's almost like could be even just how we think, and we, like, if we think positively, usually positive things happen. If we think negatively, negative things can happen. So possibly because he always was painting himself like that, it almost was like a unfortunate, future prediction by him.
True, but if you look at another fact, that when he was painting himself, he was looking at himself in the mirror, correct? So
yeah, probably,
when his opposite eye, that's a mirror, the opposite picture, correct, is the mirror image. So in fact, when the universe doesn't know from left from right, if you just look at it this way, so his correct eye was gone, the one that he was actually painting, because it was a mirror image. So universe is very smart.
And that's true too. Yeah, it could have possibly, been that situation. And
then the thing is that we're not steering away from this conversation, because if we look at your monkey and even the Raggedy Doll Ann, right, those are the items with the incarnated spirits. So if we talk about reincarnation, those are the incarnated spirits that came into the body because what is the incarnation? Meaning that in the body. So those spirits, we don't actually know what kind of spirits they are, perhaps of the people who passed away already, and they're just inhabiting the body of a doll in this case, right? But in fact, it is some sort of incarnation. Perhaps we don't know much about reincarnation to the fact that we can speculate whether that was a human life or human spirit inhabiting those items, but could be something worse. So that's very interesting. And I'm never visiting you. I'm never seeing your monkey in person. Never seeing that raggedy doll. Nothing. I'm not coming for a visit ever.
Well, it's funny. It's funny. A friend of mine nicknamed my office when I was renovating it here. He said we should call it the Ghost Loft. So that's kind of what I call it now. Is the Ghost Loft because obviously it used to be. I live in a century home. I think it's 110 years old. It'll be 111 this year. So the attic's got the slanted roof, as you can see in the back of me. Anyone that's watching on YouTube or Facebook Live. So nicknamed it the Ghost Loft. And there's actually a spare bedroom up here. We have a spare bedroom here and one downstairs, but everyone hates sleeping up here because all my paranormal
I
stuff.
don't blame them. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
it puts people on edge for sure. But it's interesting. I feel nothing up here. Like I said, it's very comfortable and yeah, it's nice.
Well, that's nice. That's nice. Well, actually, the reincarnation, coming back to your comment that, oh, you never want to come back, it is viewed as a process of learning and self-improvement
Mm.
because it provides us with the multiple chances to learn from our past mistakes and develop virtues and ultimately achieve spiritual enlightenment or liberation from the cycle of rebirth. And if we talk about the spiritual enlightenment, there are so many people who are just running around and telling everyone, "Oh, I'm an enlightened person." What does that actually mean? Enlightenment meaning that you let the light in, and you're filled with light. Although so many people who call themselves enlightened people are not filled with light at all. So that is also an interesting fact.
Mm.
Yeah, so we have so many different researchers that have already done a lot of work on reincarnation. Like, for example,
Yeah, I
Dr.
love the
Ian
cases
Stevenson.
where yeah, Ian Stevenson has as well. Yeah, Ian Stevenson, Jim Tucker.
Yeah.
I love the fact when they have a case where usually the child provides information that they're able to corroborate. I've heard stories about they've tracked down the family and the date of death and the time of birth kind of coincide with each other. That the child has always talked about that town, and then when they do the research, they find out that is where he's from. My colleague, Daryl Walsh, he's a lot more skeptical with reincarnation. He often thinks that it could, if the parents are talking about it, then the child could overhear it and, start getting these ideas in their head. But
Send
there's
him over
just, you
to
got to look
me.
for those.
We'll
Oh,
get
I
him
know. I
squared
know you.
away.
I know you would argue it with them. I usually argue some things
I
with
will
them
not
as well.
argue with him. Why argue? We're just going to put him down and that's it, and extract all those past lives from him.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I love the cases where you can actually corroborate stuff because otherwise it's almost like everything else in the paranormal. It's very subjective. So I think when you get a really good case of reincarnation and dig into it, you can. You've done a lot of hypnosis. Have you done anything where you've actually gotten some past life information from a client able to corroborate anything? Whether it was a date of death that was corroborated or a name or anything.
There are a lot of them, in fact, and those cases are such interesting cases because they give you the confirmation of the life that used to be, that the person that you used to be is actually the continuation of the same soul. And what I've noticed with all the people that I have regressed, that we have looked at previous lives, I've noticed one commonality. Well, actually, there are many commonalities, and one of them is the pattern that continues throughout the lifetimes. That's very interesting. There is a pattern that is just like a line that goes from one incarnation to another. And that is particularly interesting, especially with those people who did not believe in any past life, in reincarnation, or even possessing any past lives experiences. So for them to be able to see and recall something that has um, a reflection in objective reality, for them it's just mind blowing. I had one of the recent clients, she came to me and we did a past life regression because she really wanted to see, to look at herself, why she has this recurrent dreams.
Mm,
And turned out to be that she was one of the wives of Henry VIII, the Bluebeard. And she was Anne Boleyn. But we can, of course, speculate why she was able to regress into to that particular historical timeline, right? And perhaps she already knew a lot about Henry VIII and all of his wives and how they all died, right?
mm,
But there were interesting, very interesting details about her life, about the people in her court that are not so widely known in history, and
right.
the ladies in waiting, and the details of their lives. So that was very interesting because I was able to locate that lady in waiting and the details about her life, something that my client had told me during hypnosis. And she was extremely happy to find out. And she gave me so many details about that lifetime that even the death, actually, the death was different. While we know that she was beheaded, right? I don't
Mhm.
remember exactly what happened to her, but she was not
Yeah,
beheaded.
Henry wasn't too kind to his wives.
No, he was a particularly miserable man at the end because the problem with his leg. Otherwise, he could have been a nice, fluffy, kind man, right? But we will never know because he
It's
was
it's
killing
funny
all his
because
wives, and she was one of them.
Anne Boleyn was married to Henry VIII, and her apparition is often reported as a residual haunting. They often people that see her at the castle where she was executed, or the tower, I guess. Um, they often see her, being carried by two guards off to the execution. So yeah, no, Henry VIII, he wasn't too kind to his wives.
But if you look at that, Dr. Elliott, what do you think of this fact that her apparition, so essentially some part of her soul is still there, or perhaps the apparition would be in a form of a hologram that
Yes.
keeps appearing in that place, but her soul reincarnated into different bodies. So how could she be
Yes.
in the different places at the same time?
Yeah, no, I think her haunting would be a residual haunting. So it was, probably very traumatic for her that she was about to be beheaded, and in some instances, what we've been able to tell through research and human experiences and interviewing people is that sometimes it leaves an energy imprint, or it's called the stone tape theory, where something has been recorded in the environment, or that energy has been recorded in the environment. And for whatever reason, when circumstances are right, it will replay, like you said, like a hologram or like a video recording. And that type of apparition doesn't communicate with the living. So if you were, a janitor cleaning up at the museum and you see Anne Boleyn, walking down the hall and you yelled at her, she's not going to respond to you. She's going to continue to walk, the way that she did at that time that that energy was recorded in the environment. So, it's almost like it's them, but it's not them. So like you said, if you're a believer in reincarnation and she's either, moved into the spiritual realm or she's been reincarnated, she's off living that life, but her energy from that incident was recorded in the environment. I had a really cool story. I believe it was I got my books on my desk here, but it was more supernatural encounters from law enforcement. And there was a police officer that had received a call from a janitor working late at night. And he said it sounded like somebody was being murdered in the apartment upstairs. He said he could hear furniture smashing and thumping and a lady screaming. So it was actually faster for the police to run down the road because the police station was just a block away rather than get into the car and get out through the secure gate. So the two police officers that were working that night ran down to the post office, and there was apartments above the post office. And the janitor let them upstairs and let them into the apartment. And when they're completely empty, there was absolutely no furniture there at all. Looked like nobody had lived there for quite some time. One of the police officers actually had the idea to shine his flashlight towards the floor, and he could see dust on the floor. And the only footprints that they could see in there were from their work duty boots. And the janitor was freaked out when he found this out. He was waiting outside the apartment, so they told him. And he said, no, he said, I'm not making this up. This really happened. Went out through the fire. They go back in, they check the window, but when people are lazy and they don't tape the windows off and take care when they're painting, somebody had actually painted over the windowsill, so it was kind of sealed shut, and there was no way to get out. So the police went outside, they checked the roof, nobody up there. Went back to the station, wrote the report. And the next day, while the member was sleeping, he got a phone call from the chief of police, and he was kind of laughing on the phone. And he said, tell me about what happened last night. So the police officer tells the chief of police the exact same story that I just told. And he said, he said, that's interesting. He said, that's the second call we've had there for the same thing, that there's like a fight or a murder in progress. But he said the really strange thing is that several years ago, there was actually a homicide in that apartment. And apparently a gentleman had murdered his wife or his common law with a butter knife. So not, a serrated knife. So it would have probably been a very brutal homicide, especially having worked homicide myself for many years. So that incident has now become almost like a residual haunting because it's now replayed at least twice that we know, according to, the local police department. So certainly they're an interesting type of haunting, and I love hauntings. I love ghosts, and I love talking about the different kinds, but that's certainly one type of ghost. And it's not one that, like I said, you can communicate with or anything like that. It's almost like you said, a hologram.
Yeah, so that would be hologram. That is so interesting, and I'm so glad that you recorded that event, because now we can base our knowledge and make hypotheses and understand more things about this phenomena. Yes, about the hologram. It's like something is recorded in the environment, right? In that particular time, it just recorded. Maybe that was charged with emotion or not, but it was recorded, and it remained there as it is.
Yes.
Throughout the centuries, just appearing again, and again. So that's interesting, because I know, and of course, this is the funny thing about the reincarnation, because if you ask people who did reincarnation, they are going to tell you that, they remember thousands and thousands of their lives. Quite possible. I don't doubt, but a lot of them, somehow, they are kings and queens, and emperors, and somehow nobody is a janitor, nobody
Mm.
is just a worker, doing the manual work. Nobody is a slave. So that is so interesting to me. And a lot of women would recall themselves being Cleopatra. So to me, when I was pondering this question, because one of my incarnations, I remember, and I also was Cleopatra a long time ago, and I could see the details that I was able to verify, because at that time I didn't know much about her life. But with the vivid and crazy imagery that I saw, I was able to actually verify that with historical facts, what her father was, what he did with her sister, how he killed her, and I saw it everything in my own eyes, with my own eyes. And it was not a very nice experience seeing all of that. However, I started pondering the question, why so many women say that they were Cleopatras? Perhaps they wanted, it was a wishful thinking. And of course, that when they go back, that, oh, how am I going to see myself? Perhaps I'm going to be the Queen Elizabeth. I'm going to be Queen Victoria. Elizabeth was, what? A different Elizabeth. Yeah. So guys would be kings, but without even understanding that this is a wishful thinking. And they imagine themselves. The human imagination is fantastic. We can imagine anything. But if you go back into the historical time and you find the facts that are not widely known, that is a very interesting thing. And I was able to see all those murders. And I said to myself, I don't know much about that time. Didn't know much about that time at the time. So I had to learn, and I learned even the names of her father, because that was not like I said, I did not know much about that time period. And having the names and even the faces that I saw, and I was able then to verify actually with the busts that we have, and we did not quite have any depictions. We had busts, and I was able even to see the Caesar. I was able to see Mark Antony. I was able to see Ptolemy, the pharaoh, and that was a very interesting thing. And to me, doing this research and also with myself, I know myself, brings a very interesting understanding of how do those past life relate to my life now. And Dr. Elliott, I was never a believer in reincarnation. To me, it was such a nonsense that I thought that people are just amusing themselves with this kind of nonsensical things. Up until the time that I was doing residency, while I was doing the PhD, and some of other students, they were practicing past life regression when we were doing clinical hypnosis program.
Right.
And they were doing past life regression. And I was just laying there. I was just resting with my feet up, trying to just unplug myself from the environment and rest a little bit. I was able, actually, I fell into one of my past lives, what they were doing right next to me. I was able to fall into that. I did not quite understand what was happening to me. I was so upset. To me, it was such a crazy reality. So I came back out of it. I didn't know what to do with that information. And only a year later, when I was on the island of Crete in Greece, I was able to understand what I saw. It was one of my past lives, and I was sitting on the palace of Knossos on the island of Crete. That's where the Minotaur story is coming from.
Mm.
And I was sitting there, and I knew exactly where everything was. And I wasn't even walking around. It was my home. It felt like home to me. And I knew exactly where everything was and how this monumental building looked like before. And I knew what it was, even in the basement type rooms. So to me, it was such a profound experience that I started doing my own research on that.
Very, very interesting. And yeah, it's definitely a fascinating concept. It's one of the more things that yeah, I'm almost like you, I guess. I kind of have like a little bit of hard time kind of fully like buying into reincarnation. And I think it's just some of the the skeptical viewpoints that can be presented on it, such as especially if it's a false memory or power of suggestion, or other kind of psychological factors that are taking place. So it's yeah, it's a tough one, I guess, unless you've experienced it fully. And like I said, I guess seeing is believing now in the paranormal. As I always say, a picture used to be worth 1,000 words, and it's not anymore. So it's one of those ones that I'm like, I guess maybe like I said, sometimes I don't want to come back, especially if it's like I was bad in this life and I have to learn some harsh lessons, I guess. You know what I mean?
Well, that
That's
is
why
so interesting.
I'm always trying to be good, and I do say that I do, because I told you I do believe in karma, and I do try and do good things. Like one time I was at the grocery store, and there was an poor elderly lady just behind me, and she's only buying a couple things, and I think it was like a piece of fruit or something that wasn't exactly like the best, and she was just going to leave it or whatever. And so I was like, you know what? I was like, just give me all your groceries, and I took it and paid for it. And then she was like, thank was telling me her whole life story and stuff like that. Or the odd time I've gone through the drive-through as well and bought the person's stuff behind me, and just things like that, because I'm like, you know what? Come Judgment Day, hopefully a few of these good things I do, come into play.
Oh, yes. Interestingly enough, that in Egyptian mythology, your heart would be weighed according to
Yes,
all of
that's
the
right.
good deeds that you did.
That's
So you
right.
never know. It's better to put the scale down on the opposite side, right? When you were
That's
good
the way
at the
I'm
time.
thinking too. Yeah, do
Ah,
as much good as you can. So like we've done, Sarah and I both, like, well, like for example, this last snowstorm, I probably didn't get to tell you, but here in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, we just underwent this major snowstorm. For American listeners, about 80 inches of snow, because it was like 150 centimeters of snow. So a lot, buried.
incredible,
And
incredible.
within the last couple of days, it's been melting, and then it rained a little bit. So it kind of made the snow on top of roofs really heavy, and ice. And at one of the seniors complex here in town, the ice fell off the roof, hit a propane tank, and exploded at a seniors complex and killed one senior, and it displaced
Wow.
60 others. And this was on the mayor's Facebook page, telling us what happened. So, I went on there and I talked to
Mhm.
Sarah, and we both felt really bad. And she said, I wouldn't mind if one of those seniors needs a place to live, that we could put them down in our spare room downstairs. It was actually designed as an in-law suite. It's got its own shower. It's actually like
That's
handicap
nice.
senior friendly. Like it's got like a bench you can sit on. It was designed for the
Yeah,
people that used to live here's parents. So we had reached out to the mayor and said, if one of the seniors needs a place to stay, we're willing to take them in, kind of thing. Now I know the Red Cross is involved, and they have them all put up at hotels right now. But it's things like that,
mhm.
that I think is important, and it's not doing it selfishly. Like it's I do legitimately believe in karma. And if you put out bad things, you're probably going to get bad things in return. But if you put out good things, you'll get good things in return.
Yeah, do unto others what you want to be done to yourself, right? And that is
Exactly.
absolutely true. Yeah, well, as long as Dr. Elliott, you don't put anybody there in your monkey room. Those poor people are going to have a heart attack. So don't do that. Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming live to you through United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM. And you're listening to Science and Paranormal with Dr. Elliott and Dr. Yana. And today we're discussing reincarnation. This is a fantastic topic. We have a
It is.
comment here.
Yeah, May had a good point. Good gestures must come from the heart and not to impress the universe in hopes of good judgment. And sincerity is what's judged. And yeah, it's totally it. There's a lot of people that struggle, and if you're in the position to help people, you certainly should. And I like how certain celebrities that have power do stuff like that. Like I read an article about Jeff Bezos' wife, who received quite the substantial amount of money during their divorce, and she's actually made one of those pledges where she intends to give away all her money that she got from the divorce. So she has a charity foundation, and they do grants and things like that. I think I looked into it to see if the Halifax Paranormal Symposium would
Exactly.
apply for it, but I don't think it did. It had to do with I don't even remember now whether it was children or literature or something like that. But I thought that was really cool. Like she's got the ability to help multiple different organizations and people, and that's what she's out doing when she could just keep all that money herself. But
yeah, absolutely. I think it is so important to give at least a big portion, a chunk of what comes to you away, because of the universal law of compensation, because we know of the huge amount of money that people win in the lottery, what happened to them. That's they either lose everything, and that is a totally different story. Of course, we're not going to go into that. But those people who have kept all of their winnings, they were actually at the negative point, meaning that they lost something else very important, whether that was health or their children or something negative really happened in their lives, some tragedies. So you have to be able to give, or willingly give things away, willingly give away amount of money to send money to charity, to people that are in need. It is absolutely essential, and I believe in that. And this is how I live as well. Of course, we're not those Pharisees that are standing on the corners on the streets and saying that, oh, this is what we do, look at us. This is not the what we're talking about. This is a topic of reincarnation, and you have to pave your way onto the opposite side of the scale when you are in that world, right? So, but the important outcome of the past life regression is just to see why and who you were in your previous lives, is actually to take care of some of the unpleasant conditions that you have in this life. So a lot of the times that when people would come to me, they would come with different kinds of infirmities. They would have either emotional problems or even physical problems. And sometimes past life regression helps understand where the problem originated from. For example, with the story that I told you, when I happened to be on the island of Crete, in the palace of Knossos. Of course, there were ruins of the palace of Knossos. But what happened is that I was able to get rid of the fear of closed spaces. And that was huge for me, because that claustrophobia is not easily taken care of. And for me, I knew where it originated, that I was kept in one of those dark rooms in the basement. And I saw exactly within all of the details, and I was able to pinpoint the source of my problem. So I took care of that. And
That's really
another,
interesting because it makes you wonder, people that have certain fears, but they don't understand why they have those fears,
there could
Uh,
be, they call them irrational fears. Of course, like any fear
yes.
is irrational, right? We just look at that, and a lot of the fears, they serve the purpose of survival, of course, and that is absolutely fine. But some, there are irrational fears. Uh, I also, with diving into one of my past life, I was able to get rid of the fear of the heights. I could not understand why I had a fear of the heights. And in one of my past lives, I actually jumped off the cliff. And that was not pretty, but I knew why I had a fear of heights. And I was able to take care of them right there, of that. And then, not only bad symptoms that you may have, kind of problems, emotional or physical or phobias, right? There's some good ones because we have some predispositions in our lives. For example, I always was fascinated with the English language and English literature.
Mm.
Why? I did not understand that. And of course, early on, English is my second language, but I would read literature in English. I'll be so fascinated about it. And when I first time went to London, I somehow knew where everything was. And I was so perplexed by that because this is my first time in London, and somehow I know where the streets are, even the names of the streets, and even the corners that were felt so familiar to me. And I knew where everything, not everything, because it's a modern city, of course, so much was built since then. But I was one time a contemporary of Shakespeare. And of course, there is a debate whether Shakespeare was a fictional person or not. So we have a comment here.
We do.
True
Diane
past life
says,
memories.
yeah, she says true past life memories and genetic memories affect us in this lifetime.
Oh, absolutely. And that's exactly what happened here. That's a beautiful picture, Diane. So that's exactly what happened. I discovered that I was a contemporary of Shakespeare at the time, and I was also a writer. And another interesting thing is that I lived in London at the time, and my writing style was pretty sarcastic at the time. So it is in my life now. And living in London, I could see how that person actually died in London. And I knew English literature at the time. However, I did not know much about that particular writer. And I did not know how he died, because not always that we read biographies, but we don't always know the little bitty details how the person died.
True.
And I knew that somehow he died by himself, alone. Nevertheless, I knew that he had a wife, he had children, and somehow he died alone. And when I researched his biography, the last days of his life, I came across that he had a wife and children, but they kind of went separate ways at the end of life. And so that was an objective reality for me. I was able to see who I was at the time and where my love for English and English literature comes from. So it's
That's interesting.
bizarre.
Reincarnation is popular as well in literature and art. It's been kind of explored because of the mysteries surrounding life and death and the possibility of past lives in art and literature. And I'm sure I can't recall a movie about reincarnation, but I'm sure that there's probably definitely movies about reincarnation for sure. Hollywood movies.
Yeah, Hollywood movies too. We need to see, but something that I believe that needs to make into Hollywood movie. And by the way, I think it was a couple of years ago during the pandemic, somebody went to Hollywood sign here in LA and actually put the little tapes on the two O letters O, and it appeared to be as Hollyweed. So Hollywood. It
Oh
was
my
so
God.
funny at the time. Yeah, Hollywood, and you
Oh
could
my
see that from the far. That it was a Hollywood. Yeah, some story that needs to make it into Hollywood. There was one famous story of reincarnation. It was a story of Dorothy Louise Eady at the beginning of the 20th century. She is also known as Om Seti. She was British antiques caretaker and folklorist. She was a keeper of the Abydos Temple of Seti, interestingly enough, and she worked at the Department of Egyptian Antiques.
Hmm.
She
I
is
don't think I've
known
heard
for
this
her,
place.
yeah, very interesting story. She's known for her belief in a previous life. She remembered that she was a priestess in ancient Egypt. She knew so much information and historical facts about Egypt. And so what happened that she lived in London, was born in 1904. And the interesting thing about her that when she was 3 years old, she was playing and she fell down the stairs and she hit her head. And then she was pronounced dead. In fact, the doctor came and he pronounced her dead, and her mother was inconsolable when they saw that she actually came back to life. The girl came back to life, but she was no longer the same Dorothy. She started to have memories of her Egyptian life. And she kept saying that I want to go home. And when she was asked, where is her home? She would just say, I don't know, but I want to go home. And later in her life, I believe that when she was 8 years old, her parents took her to the British Museum. And there she saw Egyptian artifacts. And she went crazy. She was so happy. She was walking from statue to statue, kissing their feet. And in fact, she was yelling at the passersby, why are they walking in the presence of the pharaohs with their shoes on? Long story short, she, in fact, moved to Egypt.
Wow.
And she moved to Egypt later in life. She learned Egyptian, of course. And one of the scientists at the time, they actually said that there was not one single person who would know Egyptian language and also the culture and history at the same time. And she was the one. So she helped the science to discover, she helped science. She was a translator from Egyptian language as well. And she knew facts from Abydos that were not. That they were not written in any of the literature or historical books. And she helped to discover even the garden around the Abydos. And that was a very interesting story. And I've noticed that also the commonality with this kind of reincarnations that we can talk here in our paranormal show that she was pronounced dead, Dr. Elliott. That's a very interesting thing. And then, evidently, my understanding that she was possessed by another spirit that needed to come back and to finish the work that was unfinished before. So, centuries later, evidently, that priestess from Abydos, she inhabited the body of the girl and she wanted to get back to Egypt. But it's so interesting to me, why England? Why did it have to be England? Why could it not happen somewhere in Egypt? That's a very interesting thing.
Yeah, it is interesting. I don't know if it was like you said, she was pronounced dead, and that opened some sort of doorway from the, when you're stuck in that spiritual realm and want to come back. It's definitely very fascinating. I think it would be great to. I really wish that yeah, Jim Tucker would have been able to come to the symposium, because I know him and Ian Stevenson, like you said, with their work through the University of Virginia's perceptual studies unit. They're really trying to explore reincarnation and past life regression from a scientific standpoint. And it's just, I think it's fascinating because it's definitely a topic within psychology, psychiatry, and even quantum physicists are interested in this too, because it has to do, with some of their theories about, multiverses and things like that. So, yeah, I don't know. It's when you start diving into that kind of stuff, it becomes super, super fascinating, and you can almost fall down a rabbit hole researching all this stuff.
Yeah, and well, the interesting thing about it, how can we extract the benefit for us now? Why do we even learn anything about our past lives or reincarnation if it doesn't have any effect on our lives now? But if it does, then perhaps it could be one of the wider therapeutic approaches to take care of some of the infirmities, some emotional, psychological, physical problems, right? We could be learning about the cause and not really treating the symptoms.
Well, some people in psychology and psychiatry believe that the subconscious mind holds on to these past memories and experiences, and it's not accessible through, our conventional memory retrieval processes. So, when you undergo hypnosis or hypnotic regression, it helps bring those subconscious memories to the forefront. And then, like you said, maybe there's an underlying fear, claustrophobia or heights that, you haven't dealt with. And maybe that can kind of help you. I'm sure for some people it is, very therapeutic.
Yeah, I had one client who wouldn't have to have all those crazy stories in order to believe, right? We can hear about them in the media, of course, and we can see movies about them as well. But how do they help in our everyday life, the day-to-day life, right? And I am interested in practical application. So one of the women that came to me, she was already in her late 30s, and she wasn't able to settle down, and she was like in between and always in parties and not knowing how to settle down. And when we looked back, she really wanted to have children and a family. But when we looked back at her life, she was in a 17th century courtesan. And at that, and she did not have any children at that time. But coming back, she said, with all the visionary, all the images that she had at the time, that her experience, she was able to make sense of it and actually stop partying, stop spending so much time and spending so much energy on sexual encounters with different partners, and was able to actually to stop and learn from that experience, and to settle down and to get married and to have children, to have a family. So that was one of the practical applications that I know, and that can happen just to anyone. And I'm not saying that every problem can be solved with the past life regression and hypnosis, but that is surely one of the solutions to many questions. Now,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
it gets you thinking, for sure. It's got my mind, racing around the topic. It's an exciting topic, and like I said, there's definitely lessons to be learned. I find, like, as we gain more and more experience in life, I often think back, in the past and be like, oh, geez, I wish I could go back and talk to my previous self and kind of give some guidance and say, like, you might not want to focus on this and focus on that.
And
It's
you did, Dr. Elliott, you did. Would you like to talk about your experience that we just had with the
yeah.
past life regression?
So before the show, Dr. Yana and I spent maybe an hour, I guess,
Yeah.
doing a little bit of hypnotic regression work, and definitely picked up some themes. And again, like some of the themes were, not to work too hard. I definitely, in my previous career in this lifetime had worked quite substantially. I'd work at least 80 hours a week, was kind of my average, so double what most people work. And then when I worked on homicide, there was at least 3 times that we worked at least 126 hours a week. So extreme, working hours. And it has obviously taken a toll on my body, physically and mentally. So one of the messages was, not to work, as hard, like certainly you have to work hard and strive to hit goals. I'm not telling people to sit on the couch and eat potato chips, but, you just got to take care of yourself. You don't want to in those 80 hours every week. And I know Sarah said in her previous 2 jobs ago, I should say, she was a director. She had a director position, but she said all she did was work. She was basically the head of human resources in kind of a mental health organization. And she said it was just nonstop. You were on your phone all the time dealing with issues. And, at the time, like she was in the height of her career, but she said now with, a child here at home and all that, she's just not interested in putting in that kind of hours and work. She wants more of a life work balance. And, I think we do go through different phases in our life, where we may be more career oriented than we are family oriented for sure. But no, it was interesting. And, there were some things that I was kind of, thinking about in my consciousness come up, there was we were looking at, in the future, in another
But
life.
for the past, hold on. But for the past, what happened there is that the good thing that we asked you in the past, it was the late 60s, interestingly enough, right? Late 60s, and you could see
67.
everything in the room. Yeah, not like
Yes, I
you
still
jumped.
recall that. It was July 2nd, 1967.
Yeah, is that interesting? July
I'll have to
2nd.
look up what happened on July 2nd, 1967. See what
Let's look at it. Perhaps, you can find even more parallels. But the thing is that we asked if you were not supposed to work so hard, what would you do? And the advice was to learn, right? And to become a learned man, right? And what did you do? Not only that you got bachelor's, you got master's, you got PhD, you got everything that you can possibly think of.
Yeah.
And you don't work manual labor. That is very interesting versus what you had before. And your previous, you did not want you to work manual labor.
Yeah. And you know what? I think a lot of people that I've known that have worked manual labor are like that with their kids. They don't want them to have to do that. It's interesting. It's funny because I chose the path to go to university because back in my day, they told us that's what you had to do. You had to go to university, get a degree. You didn't want to go to trade school. But then we've kind of come to a point now in society where if you have a skill set, you're actually, kind of more valuable than having a university degree, such as like plumbing, electricians, HVAC workers, anyone that's got a skill set, drillers, crane operators, forklift drivers. There's all kinds of needs for trades people, but back then,
and I would tell you that sometimes they get more money than PhDs do. So it is not the matter.
Of course, they almost have a license. Like right now, even somebody that's just out snow plowing in Cape Breton, like they couldn't, when you would text them to come plow your driveway, they said, yeah, it's going to be like 4 or 5 days because they're just working around the clock. Like they've got so many calls coming in. It's like a license to print money for them, in certain occupations. And, once you get
to print money,
it almost is. But once you get, your Red Seal status or whatnot too, like you can open up your own business. Like my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, Jeremy, he is an electrician, and he has. That's interesting. Diane mentioned that on July 2nd, 1967, there was an Operation Buffalo, worst day in Vietnam War, more losses to United States Marines. Interesting.
How interesting. And
That
you're
isn't.
at the time when I asked when your family was, they were nowhere around and you were kind of sad. Remember that? So maybe that was a reflection of what was happening at the time. So who knows?
Yeah, could have been. But no, it's yeah, it's I don't know, it's fascinating. I
Yeah,
lost
and
my
then
train.
you looked,
I lost my train of thought. I'm
you
not gonna
glimpse into
lie.
the future. Remember that?
Yeah, and the future was interesting because it was not overworking. It was like, obviously busy and with the medical system in Canada right now, maybe in the future it'll be better. And this was future, so he didn't seem too stressed out. But I came up with the name John Cook. That was an MD,
Yeah.
which was interesting.
You were
Yeah,
38, you were a doctor in the 3045. What was that in September? That was September.
September
Interesting
30,
that
September 3045, and a doctor named John Cook, MD. But um, and
something
like
that we cannot verify right now.
yeah. I don't even know. We'd need a time machine for that, but it'll be interesting if anyone knows in almost 100 years from now, if they know a Dr. John Cook, MD. Let me let me
Yeah.
know.
But the thing is that the time is not linear, and we can go from the past to the present into the future. And not always that we supposed to know things in the future. Of course, that's why it is not easily given to us, or even the past. But it is very interesting when you said that I'm a doctor, but I don't wear the doctor's clothes or the white garments like as I wear now, right? And I asked you
Mm.
what year it was, and perhaps in 100 years the uniform is going to be totally different.
Yeah, and you see a lot of doctors now in private practice that just kind of wear business casual clothes, really like khakis and maybe like a button-up shirt or something like that. But I mean, yeah, I'm sure it'll be a lot different in the future.
Yeah, and our soul can remember, it does remember everything. It's just we don't remember what happened in the past to us. And the great advice that you receive from your future self to what you have to do now, and has everything to do with what you're doing now to increase the awareness. And awareness could also be through bringing this information, the tying science to the paranormal, what is called paranormal. Probably in 100 years it is not going to be paranormal, will be quite normal for the majority of the population, but for now that it is. And John Cook yourself told you that you have to put more work and to do better research.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that like, and again, that's been on my mind too with our organization, because we haven't done a ton of research. One is it's hard to have an idea that I think would be really cool. We were the cases where people have created like a password or a code word
Uh-huh.
with their family, and they tell the family, like, if you ever go to a medium or a site, you're hearing this code word or whatever, it's me coming through, and then that's how you'll know that the psychic or the medium is legitimate. And I was thinking, I was like, oh, that would be cool to go around to like, to get the permission. Obviously, you'd have to go through the some sort of get the permission, and then go to like hospices and see if you can get some research participants to sign up and come up with a code with the person that's going to die, and we keep that code locked up, so the family doesn't know what the code is, only the investigators do and the dying person.
Mm.
And then we tell the family that if you decide at some point to go see a medium or something like that in the future, and you're ever given like a code word or a word that's repeated or whatnot, contact us, and we want to compare it. And I thought that would be really cool, because if you did that to multiple different people, a lot of people do end up going to see a psychic. I know after my brother passed away in May of last year, my sister went in the fall to see a psychic. So some
Mm.
people do that. So it would be really interesting to kind of see if we get any hits on that. Now, one, I can already see some skepticism about it, and one skepticism would be, well, how do we know that the person who was dying didn't tell one of their family members what the code word is? You know, I guess that's something that we'd have to try and work on some protocols on. But I think it would be a cool kind of research project to do.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And also, you can do phenomenological research because I can share a little story here that I remember with a friend of mine. I think I told that story before. She came to visit me from Europe, and just in the middle of her stay, I had a feeling that she needed to go home. And I shared that with her, and she got offended at me. I said, I have a feeling that you need to be home. You just urgently need to be home. And she got offended, and she left. And then she called me the day after saying that I am so grateful to you that you told me to go home, because her boyfriend died that day, and it was a violent death. He was shot because he was one of this big shots and rich man. So he was assassinated essentially. But the interesting thing is that I never knew that man. I never knew what he looked like. I never knew how he dressed. And the interesting thing is that they, on the opposite side, they know who can see, and they come to those who can see. So by never communicating with him, only probably one time over the phone, he came to me when she went back to Europe. He came to me when I was in the United States, and he asked me persistently, because I would just disregard it. It was late at night, and I was getting ready to go to sleep. And he would just ask me to call her and to tell her that he loves her and he wants her to be happy. Now, the interesting thing is that he told me, he said, I never told her that I loved her. But you need to tell her that I do. So I'm calling my friend. And the thing is that I also saw what he was wearing, because he came to me like in the flesh and blood, right? I saw everything that he was wearing. And I called her and I said, listen, your boyfriend came here. And to her, it was something out of science fiction. And she's like, what are you talking about? My boyfriend came to you. He's dead. And I said, yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to tell you, that he came and he asked me to tell you that he loves you. And she said, he never told me that. He never uttered those words that he loves me. And I said, even that I know that he never told you, but now he says that he loves you and he wants you to be happy. And I said, I don't know what he was wearing ever, but this is what he wore when I saw him. And I told her a gray jacket, the brown pants, and what he looked like. And she started crying because she said that this is what he was wearing when he died.
You
So
actually had two paranormal experiences there, because when your friend was visiting and you had that feeling that she needed to, that it would be a premonition. You had a sense that something bad or harmful was about to happen, and
right.
had that intuitive insight, but you didn't have the specific details about it. And then it turns out she left. She was upset, but
Yeah.
finds out that her boyfriend got murdered. But
Yeah.
then you saw him, so you actually had an after death visitation as
That's
well.
true.
You had two paranormal experiences in that one story, which is
In one.
yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes they're funny. For example, with just recently with a friend of mine, she was going through some experience that I did not even know what she was doing. And all of a sudden, and that is a funny part when it happens, I never knew her dad. And he passed away several years back. Not even several years. I think it was about even 10 years back that he passed away. And it was a summertime, and I was sitting down just at the end of the full day. I was finally sitting down, and I said, okay, like I'm going to mindlessly watch something on TV and eat ice cream. So I open up the box of ice cream, right? And I just almost put my spoon into that, to scoop the ice cream. And I feel the presence of a man. And I'm like, oh, could have been like my grandfather, but I didn't see him such a long time. And who is this? And comes her father that I've never seen in my life. And I said, well, interesting. I only know your name. What is your patronymic name? Because in the Russian culture, you also have patronymic name. You don't call you as Elliott, for example. You would also find out your dad's name. What is your dad's name, by the way?
Neil. It was Neil.
Neil.
Yeah.
So you would be Elliott Nilovich. So that
Okay.
would the patronymic name. This is how we would refer to you. And interestingly enough, that he told me his patronymic name as well. I said, "Oh, okay. So now I know." And he told me, "Please tell my daughter that she should not engage in the project with burning pictures." And I'm like, I think I was in the sun for too long. And I'm like, okay, burning pictures, what is going on there? And so he said, I said, why don't you just tell her yourself? And he says that she will believe you more than if I came. I said,
Interesting.
okay. So I'm dialing and I'm telling her, your dad was just here. And he told me his name, his patronymic name, and this is what it is. And she said that's exactly what was his patronymic name was. And I said that he came in an interesting time when I was eating ice cream. He said, and she told me that he had such a sweet tooth for ice cream that, of course, he was going to be in the time when someone is eating ice cream. And
Oh my goodness, that's funny. I find that
yeah,
interesting. That's like a funny coincidence. Yeah.
and what the interesting thing was that I believe that it was not even the coincidence. I still ponder this question myself, how, after so many years, perhaps the person did not get reincarnated, right? Perhaps was stuck somewhere in between protecting his daughter. I don't know. But listen to this, check this out. I told her not to get involved, as her dad asked me to, not to get involved in the project with burning pictures. So she said, I don't know what the burning picture mean, but I said, okay, so what project are you doing right now? She was working with holographic designs of our aura to take
Okay.
pictures of the auras.
Right, right.
And and those would be, if you look at it, at the picture with the depiction of the aura of the person, and there's several layers, it would look that the picture is burning, that the person is burning. So her
Interesting.
dad never had to deal with this kind of information, with this kind of a research. He did not know, he didn't have any frame of reference at the time that he died, what it would be like, what it would be called, that even had nothing to do even with auras in his lifetime. He saw what it was and he called it burning pictures.
Yes, and
Exactly, Kirlian photography. That's what
yes,
it is right now. Thanks, Diane.
Kirlian photography. Yeah,
Yes. And
I
Kirlian
have
photography, by the way, guys, it's also Russian, the Kirlian scientist, Kirlian, that also Russian. He invented this method.
oh,
So
interesting. Yeah, I learned something new tonight. I had heard about Kirlian photography, and actually had a friend attend a kind of a, I think it was a psychic fair, basically, and she had a photograph taken, yeah, of her aura, and I had asked her to try and find the medium's card because I wanted to learn, more about the process, kind of thing. But she couldn't find the business card. But yeah, it is a interesting topic for sure. Um, what was I thinking? I was thinking of something that would be interesting for us to discuss on another show sometime. I had it there and it's gone. I'll have to think about it, but it was another paranormal topic that I think would be really fascinating for us to discuss
yeah, I
at
think
some
that
point.
that would be great if we have to think about it, right? It went right into your subconscious mind, into your
I know I
unconscious
lost it.
mind.
I lost it. It's 12:32 here in Sydney, Nova Scotia, so it's getting late. But I love conversing with our fans. Well, that's another idea actually that I had is one night you and I should do an open mic, And we'll have our listeners, if they want to message us questions about the paranormal or psychology or hypnotic regression or hypnosis, then we can just kind of answer it. And we'll have like maybe a couple of topics that we can talk to in case we're not getting any questions or it's slow. But I think that would be really interesting too, and really engaging with our listeners.
All right, that is such a great idea.
Yeah,
Great,
I think
great,
that'd be
great
fun.
idea.
Maybe we'll do that next time. It's just the two of us.
Yeah,
Just
just
the
the two
two
of
of
us.
Yes,
Exactly. Sticker ESP,
Pimu,
that's
just
right.
look at that. Look at that extrasensory excellence.
Yeah. So as you know, so you have extrasensory perception, of course, and that's why you were able to get easily back into one of your lifetimes, right? Yeah, and also the future projection. When we cannot verify it now, but that would be interesting to spend more time in order to get more details, and then it could be empirically verified. We can have historical evidence, like Diane told us it was the worst time in American history. So perhaps we could be looking at that, why things happen, why you feel certain way, right? And more artifacts, just to look at the past and see what you can bring from there into your present life.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we just want to let everyone know too that's listening. Don't forget to give us a like on Facebook, follow us, subscribe to us on YouTube. There, those are all the different ways you can support us. We also have a website as well. For those that don't know, it's www.scienceandparanormalpodcast.com, and we also have an email, scienceandtheparanormal@ppri.net. We actually did get a message on our Facebook, and we're going to watch those videos that we were sent. It's a certain type of, I believe, insta-trans communication device method that's being used. So yeah, we'll do some research on that, and if it's interesting, maybe we'll ask the gentleman to come on and explain it all to us.
Yeah, because it's interesting to communicate with you guys, ask us questions, propose ideas, what you would like to hear from us, to discuss and bring science to you. So please let us know. And I'm so happy that we had a lot of conversation here. Thank you for the great topic. Awesome. Thank you, Diane says. So thank you, Diane, for being so active today. And
Yeah,
we
it's great.
greatly appreciate
You
it.
never know who's going to pop on and ask us questions or give us comments. It's really great. And like I said, don't be afraid to send us an email or message us on Facebook. Yeah.
Let's ask a question. Diane, where are you from? Where are you watching? Where are you listening to us? Would be interesting to know, because we come from all corners of earth to this radio show. So it would be nice to know where our listeners are. So,
yeah, it would be. Yeah, it'll. I think if we had an open mic one time, I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, so we should do it sometime soon.
May really enjoyed listening to us tonight, so that was great too. That's awesome.
Kawartha Lakes, Ontario, Canada. Interesting.
Oh, another
Diane
Canadian.
says, yeah.
Another Canadian. There you go.
Yeah.
I think it's I think it's great. There's always so much when it comes to the paranormal and science to talk about. I'd also like to try and find. I saw something about. It was just a news article that they had found some ruins underneath the ocean that they thought might have been a former stone wall by some sort of civilization. It would be really cool if we could track down like an interesting researcher on Atlantis and do an episode on Atlantis.
Interesting.
Yeah, we'll have to see who's the Atlantis guru. If anyone out there listening knows who the Atlantis guru is, let us know. I think it would be it would be really cool to talk about something like that.
We have a Dartmouth here too.
May is from Dartmouth, so I think that is it Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, or is it? There's lots of Dartmouths in the States. I know that. I think there was a Dartmouth in Massachusetts when I used to go visit them. Interesting. Interesting. Oh, and Diane said
Yeah,
she lived in England too, so she's lived all over.
I know, I know. Well, how about Dr. Elliott? We have an open mic next time, so people already know about it and come and visit us and prepare their questions.
Oh, May said yes, Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. Awesome. So not only do we have
Aha,
another
yay!
Canadian, we've actually got a Nova Scotian here. That's great. That's great.
Surrounded by Canadians.
May, you'll have to come to the 2024 Halifax Paranormal Symposium. Look us up on Facebook. I'm hoping to have Dr. Yana there next year. Her to do something on near-death experiences, or she could do, something on past lives and hypnosis as well. But I know you've got a near-death experience. I don't think you've ever told me about it, but I think your near-death lecture would be really, really fascinating. And it's something that the audience wanted as well was near-death experiences. So I think that would go over extremely well next year. So I'm gonna have to.
That was such an unforgivable mistake of mine to miss the deadline this year. Such an unforgivable mistake.
You got busy.
Yeah. Next year for sure. Next year.
Oh yeah, definitely, 100%, 100%.
All right. Well, fantastic, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today. We were live on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM. And we were here together with Dr. Elliott and myself, Dr. Yana, and all of you interacting with us today. So thank you very much. And we hope to see you next Tuesday on the open mic. Prepare your questions. And prepare to hear the answers.
I'll advertise it on our social media too, that we want to, have you come join, listen to us, and ask us whatever you want.
Fantastic. Well, awesome. See you all next time, next Tuesday. Goodbye, everyone. And Dr. Elliott, go to sleep right now. It's too late for you.
I will. Sounds great. Good night, everyone.
Good night.